Welcome to Boundaries and Beyond, the podcast that empowers you to set boundaries and nurture self-care, as well as have happier, healthier relationships. I'm Jennifer, your co-host.
And I'm Dr. Pokerel, your other co-host. And joining us is Trinity, the real junkyard dog.
Say hello.
And sometimes Toby doesn't want to be left out, so
yeah,
he's spread out in the front of us.
Yes. I hear the term boundaries thrown around a lot these days, but what does that term actually mean? We're here to clear all that up.
In every episode, we'll break it all down for you, share practical tips for building better boundaries so you can have healthier, happier, more balanced lives. And yes, we are that good.
Oh my goodness. So last episode was on the Dark Triad. And again, the Dark Triad is Machiavellianism. I said that right? I think. Psychopathy and Narcissism. And so in the last episode, we basically generalized on that topic, but now we're going to go into detail. We're going to go further into detail on the characteristics, as well as what are the goals of the Dark Triad and additional antidotes to protecting ourselves from the Dark Triad.
Yeah, and just to clarify, a lot of what we're doing is in terms of relationships. I actually had one of the comments on our social media about the specifics and the prevalence and all that. And I had to clarify, we're really doing this more for the general public. This is not meant to be an academic discussion. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about going deeper, we are talking about mostly what most of us are going to encounter in relationships, mm-hmm. and as well as how to recognize it and handle them. We're not looking at the really clinical scenarios, right? Although some of them will be. A little bit. They will be. But I'm thinking the ones you hear about in the news, we talked about a couple of cases. We're going to talk a little bit about the case of Matt Lauer. That's mm-hmm. a very good example of the Dark Triad. And on the women's side, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, that's an interesting situation.
I also want to say, though, that the comments were very interesting. All of them were. Even the one we suspect somebody was
has a psychology background.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to mention his name because I don't have his account. I don't have his permission, or I don't even know if it's a he or she. But made the comment about the Dark Tetrad.
Yeah,
that includes the Dark Triad plus the sadism. Mm-hmm. And we didn't want to talk about that because it was just going to be too complicated for what we're doing here. But
it was fascinating.
Actually, I looked up some statistics, and we're looking about 1% of the population actually has the Dark Tetrad. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but from a clinical standpoint, that's a lot of people. If you take 300 million people and you take 1% of that, that's a good 1 million people walking around or 3 million people walking around with the Dark Triad, right?
Isn't that an analogy would be how many redheads do you know in the world?
Sure. And we all know that redheads, South Park told us that gingers don't have a soul. So is that what you're getting at?
I have a nephew that I know has a soul, but yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's not insult redheads. We love redheads. Yes. And we have gingers in our family, but mostly your side of the family.
Yes.
Scotch-Irish background. Yes. Okay. So let's move on. One of the things that we were kind of lingering on because we just didn't have enough time, and I'm checking my watch here, make sure that we're going to have enough time on this one, mm-hmm. is talking about some of the goals of what people with the Dark Triad have. And what did they look for in relationships, mm-hmm. right? And I made a comment that sometimes you may have your own Dark Triad or a version of it, or at least characteristics that would attract somebody in the Dark Triad. We hear a lot from people saying, "Oh, I ended up marrying a narcissist," or getting in a relationship with a narcissist and our response usually is, okay, then you got to work on yourself so you don't attract another one.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason they zero in on you.
It's like a key and a lock. That key fits perfectly into certain locks, and there are certain personality types that are very attractive to predators. Predators want prey, right?
Right. Predators don't often go around other predators unless they're being territorial. Mm-hmm. They go after the prey. So the question is, what is it about you that landed you in a relationship with a narcissist, or in this case, somebody with the dark triads?
And that's why we're really emphasizing setting proper boundaries. And I know
and that starts with yourself.
With yourself. And for someone who attracts those types of people, it might be really hard to exercise those boundaries. But you start a little bit at a time, and eventually you've got the big boundary muscles, and you can
recognize them and setting them, right?
They're not even attractive to you anymore, and you're not attractive to them, because they like somebody that's easy prey. They don't want somebody that's hard to deal with.
Going to they don't like to do too much work, or sometimes they see it as a challenge. But we'll come back to that, because that's the antidote version of it. So let's start with what are their goals? Yeah. Okay, so one is to isolate. We've talked about isolation.
Yeah.
So what do predators do? They want to isolate you from your support system.
Yes. My father was a narcissist. I love him to death. He passed away when I was 14, but he was very much a narcissist, and that's one of the first things he did. When I look back at my family of origin, I realized he moved I was born in Iowa. We had a huge family. My mom had a huge network of friends and people surrounding her. Well, what did he do? He promptly moved us to Texas. We were completely isolated. And so when my mom finally did reach out to my grandmother for help, there wasn't a lot she could do. She was just too far away.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. Yeah. And we do see another, I come from a broken family myself, and unfortunately, one of the things that happens in these relationships, in the divorces, is that they break down the system for the children, because they use the children against each other and they try to isolate them, right? And that actually happened to me, and I had to be relocated as well. Yeah. I had to move from where one part of my family was to away from the rest of them. Yeah. And in fact, I was separated from all of it. I ended up in boarding school. So we're trying not to talk too much about our family members, just for the audience. We're trying to not get into those details, because out of respect for them. And we've done a lot of work in ourselves to realize that we're not here to bash them. Yeah. But there's a reason we're doing this podcast. Yeah. So the isolation is a big one. Okay, so then we do hear sometimes that narcissists will, when they find a mate that they're targeting, they will try to keep them away from their friends, or their friends pull back because that person is so toxic. Mm-hmm. And if you find yourself getting rid of your friends or family members, or putting walls between you, for the sake of this other person, because somebody who loves you, who truly loves you, is not going to look for that, right?
Yeah. And they'll maybe they don't get along with certain family members of yours, but they're not going to try to keep you from them if you love them. They're going to let you have your own world, your own space, your own support. Maybe they'll put boundaries on how much time they can spend with that family member, but they're not going to say you can't spend time with that family member. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And that is a problem. It's they're so toxic, and the individual in a relationship with them becomes sort of an addiction. Mm-hmm. So they prefer the toxic person over their own family members, their own healthy relationships, or healthier relationships, and that's a problem. So isolation's part of their MO. Yeah. And sometimes it may even be subconscious or unconscious that they're doing it.
Yeah. Well, and think about it. I mean, how can you better control someone when they don't have a support system? And that's what cults do too. But,
And then that's the other goal is to control the individual,
Yeah.
right? And it is about control and gaining power over that person. So if you isolate them, then they are easier to control and manipulate, similar to cults. We're not going to talk about cults today because we're going to go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So, but yes, that's a Machiavellian. By the way, we spent like a week learning to pronounce Machiavellian, right? And we
Sure.
still can't quite get that. So the
I
manipulation, the manipulation is part of it, and then isolation, and then there's the exploitation part. So we often combine the exploitation and parasitic behavior. So if you're dating somebody and they're still living at 35 in their parents' home and they don't have a job, etc., that's parasitic behavior, right? And you might want to think twice. And a lot of us, whether man or woman, feel like we want to fix somebody.
Yeah.
Because we're fixers, we may be fixers.
Men rescue, women want to fix.
Yes, and we're talking in general, right?
Yes.
So that rescue behavior, fixing behavior is part of codependence.
Yeah.
Heavy codependence,
Yeah.
because it gives us a sense of empowerment when we engage in those rescue behaviors. And I do remember when I was younger thinking that if I find a girl that's broken enough, I can rescue her.
Consciously?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I consciously believe. I didn't realize it was dysfunctional.
Yeah. Okay.
But I thought, a girl that's is gone from one toxic relationship from another, it just hasn't been treated well or right.
Oh, and I've seen that on those those love comedies where a guy will say, my strategy is to find a girl who's just broken up with a really bad guy, and so I'm going to look great in comparison.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a Machiavellian plot too, right?
It does.
But that is the exploitative part.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to use it. The problem is that what's wrong with trying to fix somebody? Isn't that a benevolent thing to do? Well, number one, it's a boundary violation because I don't have the right to fix you if you don't want to be fixed, and I don't have the power to fix you anyway.
Yeah.
You have to fix yourself. So it is a narcissistic position to think that I have enough power that I can fix you.
Yeah.
And when that's really just your role. And so the other one is that I'm treating you like an object.
Yes.
I'm objectifying you, think that you're something to fix rather than something to be in a relationship with. There was a comment in one of the posts online about somebody misunderstood codependency with interdependence.
Oh.
They were describing interdependence, but they were saying being codependent is fine. You depend on the other person and you depend on each other. That's misunderstanding of the term. Interdependence means that we are both independent, but we rely on each other for help when we need it and to get things done. But that doesn't mean that I try to fix you or you try to fix me. That's where that's where the boundaries become blurred.
Yeah, a lot of people misunderstand the term codependence. And people also see it on the other end of the spectrum where they think a codependent is a horrible person that is supplying the meth addict with meth. And no, that's
the enabler.
That's an enabler, and that's a really bad side of the codependency. But codependency can be very subtle. It basically just means you're dysfunctional.
Right, that you don't have proper boundaries.
We all have a certain amount of codependency in us.
So the issue there with the exploitation, manipulation is objectifying the other person.
Yeah.
So one other characteristic or goal is to when they have control.
Oh, well, I wanted to ask you. So how do you objectify someone? Because that's a very abstract term. You know,
I know. It's just,
I never knew what people really meant when they said that.
yeah, I think that's an entire podcast to discuss objectification. We need to keep that in mind, by the way.
Well, like trophy husbands.
Right.
And
Okay.
trophy
So in this context, the context of what we're talking about, trophy husband, trophy wife. Okay. That's objectification. So you put somebody on a pedestal, that means that you're not humanizing them.
Yeah.
You're putting them in a position that they're not a real person.
Or a sex object.
Yeah, that's a good one, a sex object. So which is what we're doing when we're watching porn.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That is exactly what we're doing. We're objectifying a human being. Now, some people say, well, they're objectifying themselves. That's not the point.
Yeah.
You got to clean your side of the street.
Yeah.
They can, if they want to objectify themselves, there's nothing I can do about that, but I don't have to participate in that process. That's where the boundary is.
Yeah.
And that's why I shouldn't be participating in that behavior. So within this context, that is objectification. You're turning that person less than human.
Yeah.
So putting them on a pedestal is you're not doing them any favors.
Yeah.
The other way to objectify somebody is assume that they're not capable of fixing their own problems. Now, there's a difference when somebody needs help. That's a little bit different. But if I go around and I clean up after you, a lot of parents do this for their kids.
Yeah.
They don't let them clean for themselves, and they clean up for them. So when they grow up, they don't know how to do it for themselves.
Yeah.
So that is a form of enabling. That is an objectification, because you're not seeing them for who they really are, for their humanity and their capability of learning and growing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a better way of putting it is when you don't allow another person to grow.
Yeah.
And this is what these people in the Dark Triad do, is they don't allow you to grow, so you're dependent on them.
Yeah.
Or they themselves don't grow, so then they can stay dependent on you. And that's a parasitic behavior, right?
Yeah.
And then if you try to abandon them, then they blame you for leaving them, abandoning them. That's all. Those are all examples of objectification, and they're within the context of what we're talking about here. There's other ways to objectify somebody, but those are the main ones. So the pedestal, we like to do the one up, one down. So we're equal in value, right? We're all human beings are equal in value. So if I value myself above you and I gain power over you, that's dehumanizing you. That's objectification. Or if I put you on a pedestal, that's objectification, because you're an idol. You're not real. That's a fantasy that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Very good.
so the other thing is, we talked a lot about manipulation, and in terms of boundary setting, lying and manipulation and controlling are part of the. You have to be able to recognize that.
Yeah.
So, clear. If somebody has a tendency to lie, let's say, "Well, I don't lie to you."
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's just a matter of time before they do.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you hear that from somebody, let's say you're dating or you're looking to get into a relationship with, that's probably, even a friendship, you got to be very careful.
And
you probably want to keep your distance.
You know, there are a lot of women that I knew when I was in the dating world that were, it was almost like they were addicted to dating married men, or dating, somebody like that bad boy that lies to everybody or cheats and steals. Well, guess what? It's only a matter of time before they cheat on you, lie
They do something to you, right.
Steal from you. It's only a matter of time.
And the evolutionary psychologists use the term poaching.
Yeah.
They poach each other's mates. And that, that's another, I think that's kind of a parasitic behavior too.
Yeah.
Because it's like the cuckoo bird.
Yeah.
So let's say a narcissistic male that sleeps around with other married women, they can impregnate other women and let the other man raise them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah, that's horrible.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
So the lying, cheating, manipulation, if you see them doing to other people, that's important. Going back to the objectification now, if they devalue other mates, like ex-girlfriends, ex-boyfriends. One thing is you say, okay, well, we broke up, but this person, we just didn't fit. That's fine. But if they're constantly devaluing the other person, that's a warning sign.
Yeah.
May not necessarily be a red flag.
Like she was such a
Yeah.
B word, or she was so irresponsible, or she always did this or did that, or he, it's only, like I said about the lying and the cheating, it's only a matter of time before they start devaluing you.
Right.
People that are in the habit of blaming others for their problems, you're only going to be part of that habit.
It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
So when they devalue other mates or friends, and they're constantly devaluing them, that's a warning sign. So you got to be careful. And it doesn't mean, for example, in the workplace, that's why they say that workplace relationships need to be, even friendships, you have to be careful, right?
Yeah.
So you might want to keep those relationships professional if they're engaging in that kind of behavior.
I know that's old school, but there was a reason for that wisdom,
Well, we saw that with our employees.
Yeah.
A lot of times there were situations where they got too involved in their personal lives, and then they got overwhelmed with each other's personal lives, and it affected their work.
Yeah.
We've
And
seen that.
unfortunately, HR they will keep your boss or your supervisor from telling you that that's wrong, because apparently these days you can't tell your employees that. But I'm here to tell you that being close with the people that you work with causes more drama in the workplace than you can imagine.
Yeah, and then we have our views on that, and we probably need to leave that for another day.
Yeah.
So what about, we talked about the cheating. On the other side of the coin of the cheating is amorality. So doing things that you would consider immoral or immoral on a regular basis, even though it's not to you, you have to be careful. You're probably dealing with somebody that that has issues around the Dark Triad, and perhaps that's not the relationship for you.
So give some examples of some amoral behavior.
For example, if they tell you that they are embezzling money at work,
Oh, yeah.
or they steal toilet paper from their place of work.
The Robin Hood syndrome.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's still not okay.
Yeah.
And they justify it.
Yeah.
So that actually falls under the Machiavellianism, right? So you have to be very careful with that situation. Now, the rebel and the bad boy and
Like
the bad girl.
Gang
behavior. Yeah, that would be more of an extreme, but yes. The other thing there is the bad girl, the bad boy, the what is it? The rebel. Okay, they want to break the rules.
Yeah.
There are situations in which it's okay to break the rules, but they're not. There's a point where they're immoral. For example, one of the things that we see in literature, for example, Harry Potter is a rule breaker, but he's focusing on the moral aspect of it.
Yeah.
Right? And as Harry Potter fans, is like we kind of cheer on his rule breaking, but in real life, we're like, okay, maybe that's not always a good idea, because it can be quite dangerous. And we're not trying to stop a dark wizard here.
Yeah.
So you got to be a little bit more careful.
There's a classic one that I'm a crime buff, but there's a classic one that they always say the psychopath, their first kind of entry or gateway into crime is torturing animals. So anybody who's callous or indifferent to animal torture, don't just stay, run. That person's a scary person. I remember, guess because of me, you became a pet lover, but you weren't into pets. And
No.
You actually first met me when I rescued an injured possum, a possum.
Oh gosh, yes.
And you put up with it. I guess in a way I was unconsciously testing you and how much you would put up with it.
So it was a form of manipulation. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe unconscious. I don't know. In a good way.
Yeah.
But, a red flag would have been somebody that's like, well, it's already dying. Let's just run over it with a car, and I've heard people that are just really callous about running over animals. And that's horrible.
That is actually, compassion is actually one of the antidotes,
yeah.
right, to the Dark Triad, especially for the psychopath.
Yeah.
So being kind and being compassionate towards others is something to look for, because the psychopaths are not really capable of that.
Yeah.
They can fake it.
You don't mean be kind and nice to the psychopath, do you?
No.
Yeah.
No, just kindness in general, kindness to other individuals, especially those that are less fortunate.
Yeah.
So engaging in kindness and compassion, that is a good sign.
Yeah.
And that is an antidote. So you want to look for those things.
But on the flip side of that coin, a psychopath will take advantage of someone who's habitually nice and kind. So you also have to be, what is the saying, as wise as a serpent, gentle as a dove. That's where, you need you need your boundaries. And so
Right.
You don't let someone take advantage of you just because you're a nice and kind person.
Right, and that would be a good example why we need those healthy boundaries, because you got to know when that boundary is being crossed and where to set it. But that is a good example of where these individuals prey is to those that can be a little too kind and maybe even naive. Right, that's where they're preying on.
Yeah.
And that would be the Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't know how to. Ghislaine.
I don't think anyone pronounces it right.
Anyway, okay. So the other term that that kind of sums up the psychopathy part, because there's also impulsiveness.
Yeah.
And I guess that this is one that I would want to address is impulse control. They have difficulty in controlling the impulses. That can be seen in the drinking.
Yeah.
Drinking and dangerous behavior and smoking.
Promiscuity.
So those are perfect examples where they can't control the impulses. And if that's happening, you got to wonder. It doesn't mean they're psychopaths, but they certainly qualify for the impulse control difficulty.
They also have a habit of spending money lavishly.
Okay, that's another one. Okay, so overspending, and that is, again, that doesn't make you a psychopath.
But you like shopping.
Yes. So shopaholics and stuff like that. Yeah. Those are impulse control issues, but they don't make you a psychopath. Yeah. Is the callousness that brings in the element of psychopathy, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about in our last podcast about some people say, well, if they're stupid enough to have something stolen, they deserve it, right?
Yes.
They deserve to lose it.
That's a classic statement of somebody in that triad.
Right. So that's the callous. The stealing is the Machiavellian, the Mac, and then the psychopath is like, they deserve it.
Yeah,
that's the callousness. I wanted to talk about the gaslighting part.
Yeah,
because I was looking it up, and there's not a lot of literature on that term, and I was surprised to even hear that because it's so obvious to us that gaslighting is something that happens. Is like I tell you that something's not really there. And there's a lot of research on perception about telling somebody something's there and it's really not.
Yeah.
And that is confusing. In fact, one of the things that is associated with schizophrenia is living in a family where there's mixed messages, right? And then family systems understands this very well. But the term gaslighting that comes from that old movie, actually, I think it goes back to a British play, and then a movie was made with Ingrid Bergman played the lead role.
Yeah.
She was stunning back then. Even in black and white, she looked stunning. And then Angela Lansbury and I cannot remember the lead actor now. But anyway, the point is that there were gas lights in the house. This was before electricity, and they kept turning them off and down. And then when the wife,
Who's they?
So the husband and his lover were trying to.
Ingrid Bergman.
Ingrid Bergman is the
wife.
No,
she was the wife.
She was the wife. Ingrid Bergman is the wife. The lover is Angela Lansbury.
Yes.
And they were trying to detach her from reality. And what they would tell her is, there's no gas lights. Look again, it's not there now. And the gas lights would go on and off. So she was convinced that she was crazy.
Yeah.
Until somebody figured it out. And I don't remember the details of the movie, but that was the point. Anyway, they will tell you that you're imagining things, that things are not really there.
Like, no, I wasn't cheating. You didn't see me. That girl is just a friend from work.
Yes, and that's how we are.
We
we're
weren't
employees.
flirting. We're just good friends.
I remember we were at one of our kids' birthday parties, one of their friends' birthday parties, and one of the other parents showed up with the assistant instead of the mother. Do you remember that? And we were like, oh, okay. And unfortunately, this couple ended up getting divorced later.
Yeah.
So that was, we were like, oh, we knew something was up.
Yeah.
But, we didn't say anything or anything like that. It wasn't any of our business. But that's the kind of stuff that they will tell you, oh, no, we're just working. And we had work to do, so we had to go to this thing or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
or I've heard another one where two business colleagues had to go on a trip together, and they got the same room because it was cheaper.
I've heard that one too. Yes.
Yeah.
So they go on a business trip, and they had to get the room together because it's cheaper than getting two separate rooms.
Yeah.
No way they save money. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's gaslighting. Classic.
Some of the other characteristics that we're looking at is we talked about the impulse control and the repeat offender. Somebody keeps getting in trouble with the law. That's the bad boy, rebel, bad girl.
Or somebody that gets caught in anything and, I'll never do it again. Or maybe he hits you. I'll never do that again, or caught drinking.
And we're not talking about simple speeding tickets.
No.
We're talking about serious stuff.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit more serious. It's not necessarily felonies, but they keep getting into bar fights, for example.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, when are you going to learn your lesson? When are you going to grow up?
Yeah.
The infidelity, we mentioned that, right? We talked about cheating and all that.
Yeah.
That's the infidelity. So those are signs. For example, if you're dating somebody who's married, did you mention that is so obvious? Why are you're at that point? You're the one that needs therapy.
And that one, I've heard this over and over again from girls that will say, "Well, he says that they're on the rocks and they're getting a divorce." I remember what's the guy who killed his entire family? Chris Watts. He told his mistress that, we're not getting along, we're separated, when in fact, they were still doing their podcast together. She was pregnant with their third child because she thought everything was perfect. So yeah, they'll definitely lie. And so if they haven't been out of that relationship for at least a year, that's not even, even somebody that's only been broken up for a couple of months, that's not a healthy thing.
So you gotta, at the very least, they have to be, the divorce papers need to be finalized.
Yeah.
Right? Or they have to be completely broken up, not in the process of breaking up.
No.
Even then, did you really want to be in the rebound with the rebound chick or the rebound dude?
Yeah.
We talked about the grandiosity that they have to. By the way, it's not just that they talk about themselves, trying to make themselves look good. They may not necessarily have to lie, but that's all they talk about.
Yeah.
That's the whole subject matter, is that. And they can't get off the topic of talking about themselves. So usually if they're not asking you about you, or they can't mirror what your reality is, that's a problem.
So even if it's the baseball star or the doctor or the judge, that they're all they do is talk about how amazing their last case was, or the lawyer that's always talking about his wins, in the courtroom. And he never stops to ask you about what you're doing,
How your day's going.
yeah, or how you feel about something. That's not a good sign.
Correct. We talked a little bit infidelity and the trophy wife or trophy husband. So really good-looking people have to be worried about that. In the case of women, you might be a target for those narcissists because they want to show you off. Like, look at, I got a car, I got the beautiful wife.
Yeah.
Here, you got to be careful with that.
You're more of a collection. For
Right,
them.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the objectification.
Yeah.
In the case of men with status, you talked about a baseball player, athletes, those women that are in the dark triad may be looking for them, but they themselves may be, they may be suffering from the dark triad. So.
And that's a good point, because a lot of people think of men in the dark triad, but there are plenty of women out there. We both know of somebody she only dated men for their money, and had no compassion for hurting them, doing really kind of
treating them like garbage.
Yeah. No
And
compassion.
right. And a lot of times some men that are more naive will put up with it just because this woman is so attractive, and they'll continue to be in a relationship with her just because of that.
Yeah.
And then what'll happen is that she'll start cheating or leave him.
Find somebody with more money.
Yes.
There's always somebody out there with more status, more money, better looks.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. They're on the prowl for that.
Yeah.
So it's just you're a stepping stone. Going back to the objectification. So if you're a stepping stone for them in their career or their relationship status, that's what you have to be careful with.
Yeah.
And I think that was most of the characteristics that we were talking about. Why don't we take a quick break and find out what Trinity is wearing, because we didn't address that.
We forgot about that. Trinity, wake up.
She's protesting
Yes.
that you're waking her up.
So Trinity is wearing a beautiful little sweater dress with ruffles and a little flower. And it's very comfy for her. I think this is one of her favorite outfits.
Really? She's told you that?
Yes, she has. She gets excited.
Okay.
All right.
Well, yeah, she's not protesting too much. She fell right asleep when we started. Usually she's a little bit more perky. So we were going to, when we're talking about antidotes that we're going to talk about in a minute, is you mentioned the situation with the possum. But that is one of the things that we're looking for, because I told you later, because I complained about that situation over the years, and part of it is because you took my comforter. No, it's not funny. You took my comforter, and this is when I was in training. I didn't exactly have money to buy a new one, but you took my comforter and you put the possum in there to try to save it. And brought it into my apartment, and the patio. The patio. That's true. It was in the patio, and I had to throw it away after that because it was ruined.
The comforter, not the
the
possum.
comforter. Yeah, the possum. The possum was dying. Is about to die anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, but that's besides the point. So my comforter got ruined. But then I told you something recently, that was the point where I knew that you would make a good mother. And you were surprised that I said that.
Yeah, you've never told
I've
me
never
that.
told you that.
In almost 30 years, you never told me.
I don't remember if I even thought about telling you or just didn't come up. But I was having so much fun complaining about it. that it was a point that I realized this is somebody that's just going to take care of our kids.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's the moment that I got hooked, to be honest with you. And I'm sorry to tell you,
Girls,
honey.
take note.
Yeah, it wasn't. Your beauty was what attracted me, but what hooked me in was that little possum episode.
Who knew? Who knew?
I know, right? Why don't we wanted to talk about some more contemporary instances, because we can come up with stuff that we grew up seeing, but we wanted to discuss some of the contemporary cases of what would fall under the Dark Triad. And from the men's standpoint was Matt Lauer. Then this was about 10 years ago, right? Was it that long ago?
I don't remember that.
I don't remember
much.
if it was that long, but you know, Matt Lauer, for those that may not remember, he was the host of the Today Show in the morning with along with Katie Couric, and he was seen as a trustworthy person, clean-cut image as the host of the show, and some women came forward about sexual harassment and that he exposed himself to them. And then later, after they investigated, he had a lock, a button under his desk that he could press and the door would lock in his office. So if a woman came in, he could trap her in there and then he would expose himself. And then here's the power part, is the power of the narcissism, is that they were afraid to come forward, right?
Yeah, back then, especially.
Yes. Yeah. So this was actually, I think this was before the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
And so he engaged in those kinds of behavior. And so there's the Machiavellian aspect of it, the power, the narcissistic power, and then the risk-taking that comes with the psychopathy is doing it in the workplace, right?
Oh, so that's another trait of psychopathy.
The risk taking, yeah. Well, the impulse, difficulty with impulse control, risk taking.
Risk is slightly different. It's that thrill of getting caught, right?
Oh, well, okay. Well, we can go into that as well. But there is that. That's the excitement part about it. But you can also be detached from the risk, from the consequences. So they end up, and I would say that is the callousness, that he doesn't care. I think when women came out, he was very dismissive of their of how his behavior was affecting them. So those were those three elements.
As most psychopaths, Machiavellian, that's a good tell too. If somebody is being accused in the news or online, and they're dismissive, that's a key. That's a good tell. But if somebody is truly, worried, that person could very well be innocent. And there are some people that have been, like Johnny Depp, have been shown to be innocent in the court of law. And often I love that saying in the Bible where it says, you'll know them by their fruits. So people who have a reputation for being kind and going out of their way to help people, like apparently Johnny Depp was known for that, as opposed to Matt Lauer. How many people came to his defense, Well,
that's true. Not a lot of people came to his defense. Yeah. But you bring up something interesting, is that a lot of times these people, as this is the Machiavellian aspect of it, they'll overcompensate, or I wouldn't say overcompensate, but they'll compensate for their behavior in the dark, if you will, by being generous to charity.
Oh, so yeah, there is the Machiavellians. You do have to be careful with
yes,
them.
Because they will do that, and it will be, once you look at it, the more they misbehave behind closed doors, the more they'll donate or participate in charitable contributions to sort of even the score.
Now, what about just acts of kindness, like, they're caught giving a homeless guy a meal?
Are the cameras rolling?
Well, I mean, Yeah, I guess there you got to
That's the
ask
question.
that. You got to, was he actually caught, or was he in front of a bunch of cameras?
Right.
Yeah.
So politicians often do that in front of cameras, right?
Yeah, kiss the
There's a
baby-
disaster,
kiss
there's a
the
hurricane,
baby.
and they show up, right, kissing the
Yeah.
baby, etc. So, but that just because they're doing it doesn't mean they're being genuine.
Yeah,
But the question is, like the possum,
yeah.
nobody was filming you.
No.
You weren't performing for the cameras. I knew that was genuine.
In fact, I was really worried about what she would be thinking.
Well, I was thinking, is this girl crazy or is she just really compassionate? And so we
A little of both, maybe.
yeah, you've been bringing a lot of strays. Well,
Yeah.
there you go. So many strays over the years that we've had to put a boundary on these strays, or else this would be a zoo.
Yeah.
But yes, that is the question. I think you got to ask yourself: are the cameras rolling?
Yeah.
Or is this genuine behavior? And sometimes it's hard to tell the difference.
Yeah.
Okay, but the more in the public eye they are, and the more they are, I think the part about the grandiosity is, if they're making it public that they're being so generous, you have to
Yeah.
question that,
Yeah.
or at least be careful. Like we promoting our businesses, we often donate to charity, and the business is promoted, and it's a win-win.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make
that's
us
a typical business move.
right. A lot of businesses do that.
But, there's also, what are they doing behind closed doors? When you get to know that person on an intimate level, does suddenly the charm turn off? Or, are they being kind to that homeless guy in the street that nobody's looking at,
That's a good point. And I think one instance there would be that ego threat that narcissists can't tolerate. So if you tell them you're not as smart as you think you are, and they get very aggressive.
Yeah.
Okay, sometimes violently aggressive. Okay, there's some cases, you didn't want me to mention this particular case, but there are cases where celebrities, they get abandoned and end up killing their love interest, their spouse, whatever. So anyway, so those, they can get aggressive if you tell them you're not as good looking as you think you are, you're not as smart as you think you are.
Yeah.
And if that hits home, then they can get pretty aggressive and sometimes even violent. So,
Or they may turn that on you and say, you're old, ugly, and nobody's going to want you after me.
right,
I'm the only
you're
person.
used goods. Right.
I'm the only person that's going to love you.
And and if you're strong enough and you got good boundaries, you'll say, okay, I'm out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
See ya. Let's change. On the women's side, Ghislaine Maxwell, we talked about before, that would be a good example of a female triad. And that's a dark one.
Yeah.
That's a real dark one.
Yeah.
She was procuring young ladies for Epstein and children.
Another psychopath, no,
He's a sadist. He would be the Dark Tetrad.
Machiavellian.
No, he would be the Dark Tetrad.
Okay.
He would be sadistic, Machiavellian, psychopathic, and narcissistic. That would be and I'm sure she does too. She is part of that tetrad, but we're not trying to get too complicated. But she collaborated with him, and then from prison, I should say, after she's been found guilty, she has been caught, or she's been on record saying that she's going to get the president of the United States to pardon her, and takes photos from prison. That's a narcissism, right?
Yeah.
The callousness about the damage that she did, because that's part of it, is you're so caught up in your status, even from prison, that you don't take into account the damage you did to these poor girls.
Yeah.
Right? That's a callousness. The risk behavior is something very illegal across internationally, with at least we think that this was all done to blackmail powerful people. So that is very, very dark.
Yeah.
And then before that, she was a London socialite.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all the signs are there for this woman. And I'm sure in person she's very charming, but that this is somebody you really want to avoid. And those are very, very dark.
Yeah.
This is a very dark example, I should say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So are you saying all socialites?
No.
No. Okay. So just
No,
that
but there's some narcissism involved in the associated with this socialites.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying they all are, or they're even clinical narcissists. So going back to the antidotes, because we're not trying to fix these dark triad individuals. I don't know that we can. Personality disorders are notoriously difficult to treat. It's those individuals that are like what we call subclinical. They're not quite full blown, if you will, that you would diagnose them as such. But they have features of them, and they might be redeemable. Let's say you're already married to somebody with these features.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they don't quite respond unless they're in enough pain.
Yeah.
We talked about the proverbial rock bottom. That's what we really are looking for.
Yeah. And it is even the psychopath. I've seen some psychopaths that they're in psychopath recovery.
Okay.
But you'll never get compassion out of them. It just doesn't exist. They may learn to live by a certain code, kind of like Dexter. You know, if you've heard of the series.
I know, that's a fascinating show.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's based on a real character or not. I don't know. But that is a fascinating show that they're able to, if they're OCD enough, they can live by a code and function in society.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And some people argue that Batman, the character, is based on a psychopath.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he has a set of codes. He doesn't really have morals, but he has a set of codes that he lives by.
And there's even a famous scientist that he's a neuroscientist, and he does TED Talks. You can look him up on YouTube, but he laughs about how he accidentally found out he's a psychopath when he was looking at brain scans.
Oh, wow.
And he put his own brain in as a control and found out, I'm a psychopath.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting to hear him talk. And then, when he asked all of his friends and family, am I a psychopath? They're like, you didn't know that?
It's like, duh.
Yeah. But apparently he's functional. He can function,
So those are the kind of people that if you're in a relationship with them, marriage, something like that, you do want to work with them, but you got to work on yourself. You can't fix them.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's the important thing is you're working on yourself. And we say that every episode, you have to work on yourself.
Yeah.
If you focus on the other person, you're never going to get better. You're not going to get out of this loop.
Yeah.
And the only way we're going to work on boundaries is on ourselves, or we work like we've done is work with each other on our boundaries. Like steel sharpens steel. So we work off each other to improve our own boundaries. And to this day, we're still doing that.
Yeah.
We're still working on that. So some of the antidotes, one of the brilliant questions that I had online was about the light. Is there a light tetrad?
Oh, yeah. That was fascinating.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the light tetrad involves Kantianism. So that is after Immanuel Kant and the categorical imperative.
How do you spell that?
Kant.
Okay.
Okay. Did you really have to do that?
For people who've never heard of it.
So the concept of the categorical imperative is that you treat people as ends in themselves. You don't treat them as means to an end. So that's the part of the objectification, right? So I'm not going to use your money to go to medical school, and then when I finish med school, I dump you.
Yeah.
Right? You support me while I'm doing that, and you dump me.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. Did I say it right? Anyway, you get my point. So that's Kantianism. So that's an antidote to much of the narcissism. Humanism. So humanism is the aspect that people are not objects. They have feelings, they have dignity, and each individual has potentiality to grow, etc., and make their own decisions. So that's part of the boundary part. Like, I don't do things for you because I think you're not capable of doing them. You're an individual that you're capable of doing that for yourself. And that's respecting your boundaries.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I know a lot of times people say, well, let them learn from their own consequences. We do that with kids, and that's a healthy way of doing it. It's like, but they're going to be in pain, and I don't want them to be in pain. Well, if they don't experience their own pain, they can't grow up. And that, unfortunately, a lot of our generation, parents were helicopter parents, right? We saw a lot of that.
And that creates what?
Weak children that turn into narcissists, and often, so if it's the old saying about, do you want your kid to learn how to swim so that they don't drown, or do you want to keep them from jumping into any pool, any water ever?
Yeah.
Okay, they're going to grow up and drown one day because eventually they're going to end up in a body of water, right? Yeah. So one of the first things we did with both of our kids is get them in swim lessons when they were little. That's part of the humanism. Okay, and yes, with helicopter parenting, we do see narcissism.
So doing their homework for them.
Oh my gosh, that is such, and then they admit it.
Yeah,
and they admit that they're doing their kids' homework.
And then you see those kids. I remember getting physical therapy once, and there was a physical therapy assistant that he was an intern from the local college here, and he was kind of bragging to the physical therapist that, oh my gosh, I got this English test and I'm terrible in English, so my mom's going to do, or English report he's got to do. And so his mom was going to do the report for him. And so that he was very narcissistic and entitled that, yeah, my mom will just do it, So guess what? When mom's no longer around, he's going to expect his wife to do it, or his friend to do it, or anybody else he's parasiting off of. Okay,
that's a good point. The narcissistic and parasitic. Yeah. And then the other one is faith in humanity, believing in the fundamental goodness and honesty of people. So those are the elements of the light triad. And there are, interestingly, I did find that there were some studies that they looked at people who felt into the spectrum of the light triad were much happier with life. They had more fulfillment and meaning in life, and healthier relationships, or they measure it as fulfillment in relationships, and good support groups. So that was interesting, and that was a very interesting question. I had not even thought of that.
Yeah.
Although the individual elements of it I was familiar with, I did not think that somebody had come up with the light triad.
That might be interesting to do an entire episode.
Yes, that would be. If
people are interested in that subject, give us comments. Let us know.
Yes, please let us know, because then we'll record it. So going back to the antidotes. So we covered a few of those. We talked about not putting people on a pedestal, right? Get them off the pedestal.
Yeah.
So if you have your husband or your children on a pedestal, you need to see them for who they are.
Yeah.
Okay. Be realistic with them. People who are love addicts, we often use the term poison in the fantasy. So if we have somebody and we create this fantasy about them, we want to poison that. We don't want to poison the person. We poison the fantasy. That means it's like, for example, I know that this really beautiful model on Instagram also goes to the bathroom, and she stinks up the bathroom just like anybody else.
That's a gross example.
I know, but that's the point. Yes. That's the point. Making it really, really gross.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when I'm dealing with, talking with men that are struggling with those types of addiction, it helps to do that. Is you need to humanize them.
Yeah.
Because they are human. They're not a fantasy. They still have bad breath in the morning. They still have to go to the bathroom like the rest of us, etc. Okay. So having healthy boundaries, we talked about that on and on. So keep listening to this podcast so you can work on your boundaries. What was one of the other ones we talked about? The pedestal, your support system.
That's so important. Even if you've moved across the country away from your family, start making it a point to get to know other people, whether you join your church, join some sort of a book club or a soccer team or something like that, where you can meet other people with like interests and develop that. It's grounding. So one thing that I noticed that when I have this big group of friends was when I would have issues at work, I could go home and I'd suddenly forget about them because we'd be texting jokes, Same thing.
You mean forget about the problems at work?
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to a lot of my younger people that worked for me, they didn't have friends outside of work. And so they really relied on each other. And I hate to keep harping on that, but when you rely on each other at work and there's issues at work, you have no one to rely on outside to ground you.
Outside of work, right.
Yes.
So that is one of the things that in our current culture, this is the longest I've ever lived in one place now, but I had been moving every few years to go to school, to go to college, then to go for training, and I was constantly moving. So it was very hard to build a support system in that situation, and you're moving away from your family. One of the decisions we made is, as we're getting closer to retirement, because we're looking into living in Central America and other places, we decided, no, we're just going to stay close to the kids.
Yeah.
And we're going to figure out where they're going to be, and then we're just going to get a travel trailer and just follow them around and go from one house to the other and drive their wives crazy.
Yeah.
But the point is that having family close by is important. And I used to think that the further you can get away is the better, and that's actually not particularly healthy. So the support system is something we want to encourage people to have. Now, a lot of times you need a support system that meets with that serves your particular needs, right? And I don't mean that in a manipulative way. They serve your needs and you serve the group's needs. So, for example, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, is a good example of how that works. You need that support system. You need your sponsor and your recovery partners. And then there's 12-step programs for all sorts of things. We participate in the couples recovery because that's a way we mentor other couples, and we help each other as a support system.
Or interdependent.
Interdependent, right? That's the interdependency
and that's
part.
what 12 Steps teaches, basically, is interdependence, because right away they tell you to get 5 people that are your support team, and then find right away.
Circle of 5 is what
it's called. Circle of 5, and then you want your sponsor, somebody that is a little bit further along in the program than you, that kind of mentors you along, and vice versa. And then as you get further along, then they want you to sponsor somebody. So it's teaching.
It's a type of discipleship.
Yeah.
To the program. There are other types of support groups that you can find, but that is just one example. And you keep saying interdependence. So this is something we probably need to cover in another episode, but briefly, there's the independence. There is dependence. So that's usually the child.
Yeah.
So the adult is more independent. The child is dependent. And the dysfunctional ones are codependent, overdependence, and anti-dependence.
Yeah.
So anti-dependent is the one that just doesn't rely on anybody, just just by themselves, doesn't even have a support system of any kind.
The recluse.
Yes.
Lone
So
wolf.
that's the interdependent.
Yeah.
The healthy adult becomes the interdependent.
Yeah.
Okay. So helps other adults meet their needs and their needs, but with the child is dependent on the adult, and the adult does not depend on the child. So
Yeah.
that is actually a boundary violation, is for the adult to depend on the child.
And narcissistic parents will often be very resistant to their child growing up, growing apart, having their own group of friends, having their a life outside of that parent. And so if you grew up with that parent on the Dark Triad, like we did, you definitely need to get help to learn, because you're probably attracting those people back into your life in other ways. And so that's really important to learn what the light triad looks like, because we don't even know what it looks like when we're
in the middle of it,
yeah.
right? We're surrounded by all this darkness, and we don't quite see the light. One other thing you mentioned, because we do need to wrap it up, is the narcissistic parent, but the grandiose parent will take credit for their child's achievements.
Yes. You've got a great story.
Yes, I do have plenty of stories of that, but not going to discuss them in this situation.
Okay.
But yes, they'll come up and they'll take credit for their children's achievements. Their good grades are because of me. Now, sometimes it's true because they're doing their homework, right? But that's not what we're talking about, is that they take credit for the child's valedictorian thanks to me.
Or hold them up as a trophy child.
Yes.
You know, that child that's in gymnastics or competitive sports, and or, you know, in acting, and the parent moves to Hollywood, from Texas to Hollywood, to because they've got to, you know, support.
Well, that's part of the reason childhood stars are so messed up.
Yeah.
You don't see very many that are healthy.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with that. Okay. So we did get quite a bit done today.
Yeah.
And I don't know if maybe we need another episode of the Dark Triad, but I think the one on the Light Triad might be good. And we just want our listeners and our viewers to let us know what they think.
Yeah, or the other commentator, that the person that commented on the Dark Tetrad. You know, if you're interested in the Dark Tetrad, that one's starting to...
Yeah, that one. What we are going to do is we are going to talk about parenting teenagers and trying to keep them or help them identify those dark triads. So we are going to have an episode on parenting around this.
And we could even specialize, like Dark Triad females versus Dark Triad males. So, I mean, if you're interested, let us know.
Yeah, just let us know.
Yeah.
So we'll be back with more Boundaries.
Yes. Thank you for joining us today at Boundaries and Beyond. We would love for you to like and share with all those boundaryless friends and family members out there, as well as subscribe to our podcast. Also, please join us on Instagram at Boundaries Beyond Podcast. See you then.
See you then.